Katy and I'm a counsellor at Sunderland University. Today I'm here to answer some questions on domestic abuse from Rachael.
Hi Katy. So what would happen if someone was to feel unsafe with their partner at home? Who could they contact?
Okay, well, there's lots of different services that can support people with domestic abuse if they're feeling unsafe in the home. Obviously, if you were feeling really at risk, at immediate risk, you could contact the police, and you can report any domestic abuse at all to the police. So whether that's emotional abuse or physical abuse, financial abuse, any of those can be reported to the police. You can also access support from lots and lots of different services. There's lots of domestic abuse support lines and charities that can help. And if you go onto the Sunderland University website, on the wellbeing page, you will find links to lots of different domestic abuse services that you can access. Lots of support lines where you can get advice and guidance, and lots of those services will keep in regular contact with you to help you manage the situation. And the police website is also very good, Northumbria Police website. They have a lot of information on their website about domestic abuse. They'll tell you all things about how to report. In addition, they'll tell you how to report in addition to lots of other information. If you're feeling unsafe at home, it can sometimes be difficult to make reports to the police or to contact domestic abuse services, especially in the COVID-19 lockdown conditions, because a lot of people are sort of at home with the perpetrator, the person that's abusing them. So it can sometimes be very difficult to find a way to have contact with other people because they may be there with you in the home. So, a lot of these services, you can send text messages to them, you can send them an email. You can do that with the police as well. You can report things online. You don't necessarily have to pick up the phone and be heard. Another way, if you're feeling unsafe and it's hard for you to get help from services, is that you can tell people out in the community. So for example, if you go and have a GP appointment, tell your GP if you need help. If you go to Boots the pharmacy, go and tell them that you need help and they'll have a chat with you. People have come up with all sorts of ways of getting help when sometimes it's really, really difficult to speak to people. Things like, say if you've got to take your kids to the school and that's one of the only times you can get time away from that person that's abusing you, tell one of the teachers at the school and they can try and find a way to help you. But just know that there are lots of services out there. And these services do try and be really creative about how they offer their support. But obviously there's the police and there's also various other support services. Just have a look on the Sunderland University wellbeing page and you'll get loads of information off there.
Great, okay, thank you. And what would someone do if they were concerned about their friend being abused?
Okay, well, if you were concerned about a friend being abused, one of the most helpful things you can do is to try and have a conversation with them about that if you feel worried about them. Maybe try and let them know that you feel worried about them, because sometimes when people are being abused, they don't know how to tell people, or sometimes they don't know that they're being abused. They're not sure what's happening to them, but you might see something that they're not necessarily seeing themselves. So have a conversation, share your concerns, ask them if there's anything that you can do to help, anything that you might be able to support them with. What I would say is as well, often people who are abusing their partners will try and isolate them from friends and family. And what can then sometimes happen is those friends and family can start to become frustrated because they feel like, my friend's not bothering with me, they never make the effort, or my family member doesn't care anymore. All of that can happen. But if you do feel like they're being abused, just remember that it's not purposeful that they're doing that. They're probably feeling like they can't keep in contact with you because the person that's abusing them is trying to isolate them. So the best thing you can do in those types of situations is try and keep in touch with them, keep the lines of communication open, even if you're starting to feel frustrated with the situation. Just keep in touch with them. And, you know, maybe they may not be able to talk to you on the telephone anymore because the person that's abusing them is with them and can overhear them. Maybe it's easier for them to send a message. Maybe it's easier for them to send an email. Maybe they can only speak to you when they see you out and about. So try and think about the best way that you can keep in touch with them that tries to keep the lines of communication open, but doesn't put them in a position where they feel like they're too at risk.
Okay.
The other thing that you can do, obviously, if you're really concerned about somebody, you can contact the police and you can let them know that you're concerned about the safety of this person. A thing that's a good thing that some people do as well is there's a Clare's Law. If you Google it, you can look it up online. But there's a Clare's Law process that you can go through. What that is it's where you can contact the police and tell them that you're concerned that, you know, somebody you know is being abused by this person, if you have concerns. And then the police can look at that person, see if they've got any information on the alleged abuser, and then if they think that there's a risk based on the information that they might have about the person who's abusing, you know, your friend or family member, then they can actually contact the friend or family member and they can let them know if there's a significant risk to them based on any information they might have had about, you know, about that perpetrator. So you can request that from the police. Obviously, once you make that request, the police will make a decision about whether they need to disclose that information or not. But it can be a really helpful thing to do, because obviously then if there is something that comes up, then your friend or family member will be contacted by the police to share that information, and then it just means they have more awareness of the person that they're with in terms of like how at risk they might be in this relationship. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's worth noting as well, if anyone was to feel distressed, worried, stressed about a particular situation their friend's in, you can also approach the wellbeing team at Sunderland Uni to talk about it, because I know that can be quite a distressing experience, and you can actually refer yourself again via the wellbeing section of the Sunderland University website. So feel free to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So how can someone tell if somebody else is being abused?
Okay, there's sometimes it can be quite hard to tell, but sometimes there are like obvious signs. Things like one of the really common things that happens is that the person becomes isolated from friends and family. So you might start to notice that, you know, you see a lot less of that person, or it suddenly becomes very hard to get in touch with them. Obviously, there can be all sorts of reasons for that, but obviously, if you're concerned that about the person that they're in a relationship with, and you have a sense that they might be the person to sort of blame for that, then yeah, you do need to watch out for that. Sort of just general sort of increases in sort of anxiety, worry. The person might feel more down. Sometimes it, you know, when someone's being abused, it often has a big impact on their confidence. So you might find that a friend or family member who was really confident before, or suddenly, you know, they're not very confident anymore, and they're much more insecure about themselves and how they look, because often people who abuse people will focus on their appearance and maybe make comments to put them down and things like that. So you might find somebody becomes quite insecure about how they look. weight loss or weight gain. Some people who are being abused, the person who's abusing them will restrict their food, or sometimes encourage them to overeat. So that's one of the things. And often, again, they might make comments about their weight, so that person might stop eating so much. Just appearing maybe more sort of on edge and frightened. You know, maybe rushing off from events when they're getting messages. One thing that abusers will sometimes do is when the other half's sort of out doing something, you know, maybe he's out with friends or just, you know, out and about, often the person who's abusing them will want to be in touch with them quite a lot, so they might want to be sending them messages, phoning them. You know, if you're out with your friend and all of a sudden, you know, that their partner's texting them and ringing them constantly, and that's happening over a period of time, you might have to think about what, you know, what's going on there, maybe rushing off early, things like that. But these things can obviously be for other reasons, but these are things that do often happen when somebody is being abused. Appearing a little bit more unkempt, maybe. Things, money, sometimes, because there's lots of different ways that people can be abused. One of the ways is financial abuse. So somebody might suddenly be saying that they just haven't got money, they're really, really struggling to get by. They might start to look like they haven't got enough money to buy new clothes or buy food and things like that. They start maybe going out and doing things because they haven't got enough money to fund it. You know, sometimes abusers will take complete control over the other person's money so that they don't have any freedom. Things like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Obviously, the other thing is with physical abuse, you might notice bruising and things like that as well. Yeah.
And what can someone do to help themselves when they may be planning to leave their abusive partner?
Okay, well, when somebody's planning to leave an abusive partner, the risk tends to go up for that person, because the abusers tend to become more controlling or more abusive if they find out that the partner's going to leave. Not always, but sometimes, well, it's quite common that does happen. So it's really important that if you're planning to, you know, leave or end a relationship with a partner, that you sort of do a bit of planning around that. So if you're in touch with domestic abuse services or wellbeing team at Sunderland, things like that, then you can maybe talk to somebody about your plans, and they can help you to come up with like what's called a safety plan. You can also find safety plans online. You know, if you were to have a look on websites like Women's Aid and you know, domestic abuse charity websites, which is a plan of like basically how you're going to stay safe when you leave. So it might be like, okay, you might have one of your friends or family members who's going to meet you at a certain place. You're not necessarily going to tell the person that you're leaving. You've got somewhere set up to go. You know, lots of different bits of information that can help you make that transition to safety. Definitely sort of telling somebody that that's what you're going to do, telling somebody that you trust, telling them where you're going to be, so they can support you. I mean, if it's somebody that you're not living with, you know, if it's someone you're not living with, it can be a bit easier, and that maybe you can, if you want to meet that person to end the relationship, sometimes people do want to do that face to face, then just to make sure that that is in a public place, and that maybe you've got a friend who might be around in the same area or the same cafe or whatever, so that you're not on your own when you're with that person. But yeah, the important thing I think is to get advice on that if you can, and to look at safety planning so you know what to do, and know that you can, obviously, if you feel like you're in danger, you can always call the police. That's sort of the main thing.
Okay, all right, Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel.
Bye-bye.
Bye.